quickly sent a letter. We quickly sent a letter to Mo, reminding them that interim uses were for the 3 populations. We were very interested in getting an interim use program underway as quickly as we could, and that we ought to take advantage of the presence on the site of the trailers and the other facilities that were installed for the tent camp. All we got back was this was the letter that we sent. All we got back was an acknowledgement of the receipt of the letter from Mr. Shah. No more, no further discussion, no timeline on when there might be discussions, and certainly no commitment to do anything with the site. And then fairly quickly after that, I think in June, the site was cleared. The trailers were moved, and we're back to square one. And in July, we received an email from Jim Snyder. If you could, yeah. Saying that HSH will work with DPH to support the development of a sufficient budget for a program to provide day drop-in services at the site. We've not heard the term 4 to 6 weeks was used to start to finish and conduct the appropriate procurement process with an estimated start time in mid-late September. We're now in late August and have no information at all. And perhaps Karen might have some information, or anyone else. But that's the status as we know it for interim uses. Does anybody have any information on the HSH DPH process?
I can say from Larkin Street, we haven't heard a thing from HSH. I assume it would have been some of perhaps the Prop C, like shelter and hygiene money that that was allocated. That might be the source. If that is 100% an assumption on my part. I have nothing to base that assumption on other than the fact that that's the pot of money that would generally seems to be most the obvious source. Our City, Our Home Oversight Committee was just met today to review those allocations. So it's possible that the holdup is in the process of actually identifying the money and getting it into HSH's hands. But that's just a guess, and I've heard nothing else.
But you've heard nothing definite?
I have not gotten any outreach about a plan for 730 Stanion.
Question. This is Louise with a question. Where did you say you thought the money was coming from? What letters had you recited off?
Sure. So the Our City, Our Home, or OCO, OCOH, oversees the pot of money that's been collected through Proposition C. And there is a bucket of Prop C dollars that are reserved for what they're calling shelter and hygiene, which is what my guessed daytime interim uses would fall under. So if there is some presumption on HSH's side that they would have money through that in order to fund something at 730 Stanton. I think that's just taking time to kind of work through the process, because the oversight committee just met today to review those larger pots, not the specific uses, but the larger pots of money.
All these different sources, different city programs, and no single clearinghouse that provides all the information from all of them available at one source for us poor stupid citizens of the city.
Well, we're assuming in trying to force MOHCD into that role, Louise. It is their site. They have site control. They directly are connected to the mayor.
Yes.
So we're trying as much as we can to constantly place that emphasis on MOHCD. So far, we've not been too successful. It's unclear to me where Jen got her information, whether or not it was from MOHCD or DPH or HSH. So I don't know where she got her information, but Mo controls the site and should know if there's going to be interim uses. I'm sure someone at Mo is informed, they're just not telling us.
Yeah, speaking to that, I just wanted to say I checked in with Mary before this meeting, and unfortunately she also, along with Ilsa, we don't have any updates and haven't been reached out to as well.
Thanks for the clarification.
I know we haven't heard anything else from Dean's office or from Jen about it.
Okay.
Is that right? Calvin, you haven't heard anything else from them?
Yeah.
From Dean's office? From Jen that sent out that email?
Yeah, well, I've not heard any additional information other than the email that we received. I'll jump into the report on the 6th. I was the only person from the CCC invited to a meeting organized, as I understand it, by Ted Lowenberg, in talking with the mayor, and then the mayor directed the mayor's office of Housing and Community Development to do a briefing on the status of the redesign of the project. And my first question before it started was, what's the status of interim uses? And they did not want to hear that question and immediately stated that that was not going to be discussed on the 6th of August, but only the plans for the 8-story building. I again, at the end, once it became evident that there would be a substantial delay in the project, the state now only does one offering a year in October. And if we don't get approved, if this project is not approved for that project at that timeline, and since it isn't designed yet, there is some question, certainly in the developer's mind, whether or not they will be. If not, it will go back, it will roll over to 2023 very, very quickly. As it is, they're looking at, even if everything goes swimmingly, they're looking at construction starting sometime in 2023, which is a substantial period away. And I made the point that nobody at Mo wanted to hear that interim uses were a very big issue in the neighborhood and would only grow as the site stood vacant for a year or so. Nonetheless, the only subject of the 6th November meeting was the new design. CCDC, Bo Han, did make a presentation. We'll all see it again on Thursday. For those of you who are interested, at 6 o'clock, there'll be a Zoom community meeting in which the design will be discussed. And also on Saturday at the site at 7:30, Stanton, at 11 a.m., there'll be an in-person presentation for those of you who are interested in physically attending the briefing at the site. To make a long story short, the new design is basically a scaling up of the old design. That is to say that they've simply added 2 more floors to that amoeba-like structure that was the main element of the 6th floor version. They have tucked it back at the corners a little bit more in order, I'm sure, to avoid shadows. There was no shadow presentation made, no, as people may or may not know, it is quote unquote illegal to shade Golden Gate Park. You can't have a design unless the Rec and Park Commission and the Planning Commission agree the public interest is overwhelmingly served, that there is a slight shadow. But the law is there'll be no shadow, no building can shadow any open space, and most especially Golden Gate Park. I am told that on Thursday there will be a shadow diagram, but I think the way in which it has been dealt with to minimize the shadow is that they have tucked in even more than in the 6-story design, if those of you remember that, on the corners above the first 2 floors. So there is virtually, there's probably more usable open space on the roof. One of the big changes, positive changes that they did, for those of you who went through the process, there was the edge of the project on Waller Street. Waller Street, of course, is single family homes, is much less dense and than even H Street. And there was a very hard edge to the building. The building just simply stopped at the lot line, and it was a pretty good sized wall that went up 6 stories straight up from the lot line. What they did do was very creative. They pushed the upper floors back from that corner, and then they scooped a rather elegant scoop on that hard edge, and created a very small garden, a planting area, I should say, not a garden, a planting area, so that it is much.
On the ground floor, right?
I'm sorry?
On the ground floor level, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
The other great change is the senior center has gone from 500 square foot to 2,000 square feet. The third major change is that the entryway on Stanton has been opened up even more. There is, folks may remember that in the last version that we saw, there was a screen, very much like a kind of a metal netting that screened the entry. That has been removed. There's now planting, and it's much more open than the sixth floor design. They've finally done paid a great deal of attention to the corners on the ground floor and the second floor. All of the ground floor corners, the two facing Stanton Street, Stanton and Waller and Stanton and Haight, are now glass, so you can literally see around the corner, and are very open. It's as airy and light on the ground floor as you could possibly make an 8-story building. The rest of the building is a big ass building, and there's no hiding, unless they plant ivy and paint it as sky blue, the size and bulk of an 8-story building. They had no floor plans. I can't tell, didn't know, they didn't make present. I'm told they will, at my suggestion at the community meeting, just a set of unit mix and a typology of each floor. How many studios, how many 1-bedrooms, how many 2-bedrooms. They're very cherry about the inside of the building. They really are not into a collaborative designing process of the interior of the building. So they're very reluctant to even do a floor plan. But I think that there will be a unit count and a floor plan. I think they'll list a range of unit sizes, which was of some interest to many folks in the previous hearings, although they're a little reluctant to do that as well. Not for any nefarious reason, I believe. It's just that they haven't figured out the interior structures. They're looking a great deal at the foundation right now. But I assume there will be those kinds of details. So bottom line, Mo does not want to talk about interim uses. It's a big building. They responded, it seems to me, to the criticisms, the biggest criticisms that were made of the 6-story design, and they've incorporated that in the 8-story design. And they have tucked in the corners, I think, to avoid shadowing the park as the sun does rise in the east, and the project is between, and in the morning hours, the sun and Golden Gate Park. So I'm sure there's some concern about its bulk and shape. But I think they've addressed it. Happy to answer any questions. But everybody will see it on Thursday.
And
CBIA was present. There were 2 or perhaps 3 people from CBIA, and perhaps 2 people from HAIA. Only Ted Lowenberg was, well, not even Ted Lowenberg was happy with the design. The folks from CVIA were not happy with the design and were not happy with it being an 8-floor building. Since the CCC has not taken a position on the size, I did not opine on the size. I did opine on the slabbiness and bulkiness of the upper floors, principally through when you, unless they have made some changes in the renderings, you'll see something that looks like, you know, a box that the refrigerator came in. The windows could break that up, but they're very uniform, and the texture and colors of the upper floors are very uniform, which tends to magnify the bulkiness of the design. It is, he says again for the 19th time, kind of elegantly tucked in at the corners. And as I say, I'm sure they've increased rooftop open space on the podium. But I think they still have a distance to go on the exterior treatment of the building.
This is Louise. If I could make a comment or two about what Calvin has just said.
You certainly can, Louise.
Okay, if you want to see a building that's gray with those vertical grooved lines, I suggest you go over to Stanton Street between Balboa and Fulton and take a look at the back side of the gymnasium and swimming center
The
built
correct
there
center?
for the university.
The correct center?
The correct center. That's the kind of finish that they're talking about. The second thing I would like to point out, Calvin, you have said open space on the roof level. Nobody seems to have heard her say it but me. But when they were talking about the garden on the roof at one of the meetings, Bo Hahn said, "Oh no, that's not for the tenants. That's where we will grow vegetables for our other facilities that have dining rooms." That space is, according to Bo Hahn, not for the tenants. Somebody specifically asked if tenants could have their own little gardens, and that's when she said that. The only outdoor space that they had for tenants is what was behind the transparent Berlin Wall on Stanton Street, and then the little space that's always in shade that's between the building and the side wall of the record store.
I hope you attend either the Saturday meeting
I'm
or the
planning
Zoom
on
meeting
both of them.
and make those points. I certainly will.
Oh, yes. And now I can't find my postcard from Bo that gave me all the info on the meetings somewhere on this messy table. So it's Thursday, the 26th, right?
No, it's this
No,
Thursday.
Thursday the 19th.
The
And
19th.
then Saturday, the 21st.
Oh, okay, so that's something else I've got on my count. Oh, I know, that's Shakespeare. What's the
So
time?
you give a phone number to register, Louise, if you're interested.
Well, I'll call Bo tomorrow and make sure I have everything.
Good.
Yeah, thank you. Those were my only comments so far. Hello?
Yeah, we're all here. We're just
Okay.
struck dumb by your comments, I guess. Or mute.
Oh,
If,
I'm not muted, right.
if you had a computer can see all the fascinated faces, you would know that we're all here listening.
Hey, sorry, my internet cut out. I was just CCDC and TNDC. They don't have anything to do with the interim uses, right?
I'm sorry.
CCDC and TNDC. They're not involved with the interim uses, right? It's all MOHCD.
Correct. Yes. It's MOHCD's call. They are delighted, believe me, the developers are delighted not to have anything to do with interim uses.
I apologize to interrupt. I do have to hop off this meeting earlier than it ends, but is there anything Homeless Youth Alliance?
Well, I wonder if you or Mary are planning on attending any of the two meetings, either the Zoom meeting on Thursday or the in-person meeting on Saturday at 11.
Yeah, I took note of both of those to send to Mary, and yeah, we'll find out if her or one of us will be there.
It would be great. It's just really important for HYA to be seen.
Okay.
Also,
Okay, well, I'll pass that on. Sorry.
No, yeah, and I'll send the registration link and more info, and I'll follow up on the email chain for this meeting.
Yeah, remember that the youth services, they've said they're going to issue an RFP for that, the youth services on that site. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for coming, Karen, on short notice. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you all so much. It's just, yeah, it's wonderful to meet all of you and just know the work happening in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Bye, thank you.
So, Sarah, are you planning on coming, or someone from?
Someone from Larkin Street will be there. I don't know if it'll be me or Sherilyn or our Director of Public Funding, but someone will be at the Zoom meeting.
Great.
If you do get anything about RFP or any other thing, I would appreciate knowing about it, because besides youth services, the interim use has got to have senior help for applying for units and all the other things us
Right.
seniors need.
Louise, I made that clear on the 6th to MOHCD that
Because I didn't know anything about that.
if they're going to be doing affirmative marketing, there are no senior organizations in the neighborhood.
I know that.
No, but
Yeah.
They've got to know that. And I didn't want, and that suddenly, once the outreach is done, knowing how Mo works, they'll send it to all of the existing senior centers, none of which are here.
Right.
So if they're serious about affirmatively marketing it to folks in this part of the world, they have to start now identifying groups and individuals that can collect lists and names. And therefore, there should be an interim person on the site soliciting interest from senior groups.
Right. And while we're talking about housing organizers, interim use, in the Hay-Berry Voice, the August one, in the article from Dean Preston, he says, quote, or whoever, we got funding for 2 experienced full-time public/affordable housing organizers to do research, to do outreach, education, and assist residents with their housing needs in HUD or publicly subsidized housing. That is someone I need to get connection with. And I got to tell you, it's really, really, really hard to get anybody from Preston's office to respond to a telephone call. They only are interested in people with computers. And with 100,000 San Franciscans, seniors, poor, elder, non-English speaking, and homeless, not having computers, according to the mayor's office itself. Yes, I keep stressing that. Preston's office needs to be more responsive to non-computer contacts. All right, I'll get back off my high horse.
Okay, so my question to all of us is, if we prevail and get them to have interim uses that addresses the 3 populations that we're interested in, TAY, families with children, and seniors, who do we get to do the senior outreach?
Oh, God, I'm suddenly can't think. Whatchamacallit, on aging up on Geary had right from the beginning promised that they could be on site to help with and do on a regular basis senior outreach, answering seniors' questions, and so on.
Well,
I would like to see one of the persons that Preston's office just hired be one of the principal people assigned to do senior outreach, to get names, to get addresses, so that postcards and phone calls can be made to people. And signs hung up around the area, not just postcards to people within 300 feet of the building, which is what the developers are required to put out when they have a meeting. It needs to be from the north side of Coal Valley over to and include Hayes Street or Grove Street, whatever's the edge of the northern edge, the south side of Coal Valley, the north side of Preston's district.
Well, the target should be District 5.
Yes.
And if you want Dean to work on it, it's going to have to be District 5. It's going to be very hard to talk about a 15-block area, but generally, I think that we need to always assist Dean's office
Yes.
and either either the aging group that you're talking about on Geary.
Yeah.
I think it would be very useful, Louise, for you to get a name and both an organizational name and an individual name that could do that. I think we could reach out to Senior Disability Action as well and see if they might be able to assist that person or give us some staff time to join that person. So I think it's incumbent upon us to put together a proposal on the senior side. I think the K side will be handled. My bet is that HSH and DPH budget, especially if it's meant to access Prop C money, will have the K side and probably the family side covered. I'm not sure who is doing advocacy in the C advisory committee, the Prop C advisory committee that was created. I don't know who's doing advocacy for seniors, if there are any advocacy for seniors around the use of Prop C monies. So it's really incumbent upon us to identify resources and people and get that in Mo's face as quickly as possible for a marketing program to make the senior uses, the senior housing available at 730 Stanton, available to residents of this general area.
Well, I think that's on the developers, not Mo. The developers are the ones who promised the outreach on seniors. And I think that your point, Louise, secondly, your point about using some of the resources from Dean's office is a good one. And I'd suggest the registrar of voters, the voter list would be a good outreach tool too.
List? That was something I've been wondering about.
We can get it, but there's limited kinds of uses that you can do with it. I'm sure that CCDC could get a copy of it.
But
let me tell you, it's a big file. It is way
yes,
too
it's
big
a
a
huge
file
file.
to do anything with.
I don't want CCCD and TNDC to do the affirmative senior marketing by themselves.
No.
We'll end up
No, of course not. Of course not. But it's not on Mo. Is what my point was.
For the interim uses, it's on Mo. And
Well, I
that's
agree,
not-
but I thought we were talking about affirmative marketing a moment ago. Maybe.
Right, but one of the interim uses has to be to prepare a resident-oriented list. Look at CCDC and TNDC have very good relationships with senior organizations in District 3 and District 6. They have no relationship with senior organizations in District 5, and none in this part of the world for the simple fact there aren't any. So it's incumbent upon us, if we're serious, to do that, to believe that TNDC or CCDC will do anything but contact the senior organizations they know is, I think, unsupportable. I think we have to identify that population in this neck of the world because there are no senior organizations here. That's how CCCD is going to do it. They're going to go with who they know. And who they know doesn't live here. They'll be seniors, but they won't be from this part of the world. That's upon us.
And certainly from the voting lists, the zip codes can tell us what's in District 5. because one of the definitions of Haight-Ashbury is the zip code 94, suddenly can't even remember my zip code.
117.
117, thank you. And then there's another zip code to the east, which goes down into the essentially the other side of Alamo Square, down to Fillmore, and that's that part of Dean Preston's district. And some of the people in that part of the district may even still have the promise of housing form, whatever it was, that when they tore down
Yes.
the Victorians, that the so-called urban planners of the time just couldn't stand.
Right.
You know.
Tab, there's been recent activity in the gay community around organizing seniors, gay seniors, for senior housing. Has the Milk Club been involved in that? And could they help out, or the Housing Rights Committee perhaps? Unmute.
You're on mute, Ted.
I was just in New York for 3 months helping to take care of my mother, so I'm still catching up with things. But I can check with the club. And I also know that Senior Disability Action right now is planning to hire additional organizers. So I think, that, as mentioned before, they do work with the whole city, and so they would certainly be a very key entity for us to check in with to see what they could maybe contribute in this. But yeah, I can also check with Milk and also the folks that would be more likely involved in the housing component. I'll let you know.
That would be great.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because the gay community seniors have got the building that's just, oh God, I can't think. Sorry, I keep having senior moments. It's across Market.
Open house.
Open house. Thank you, Tess. And anything that they have found works would be very helpful to a stumbling little senior working group. The housing that's intended on Market close to the Castro is not senior housing. It's all formerly homeless. It's one of the two that's in the pipeline, to use the phrase, to be built. So anything that that's going on with open house and other, the housing committee with the Harvey Milk Club and so on.
I had also gotten, there was formerly the Haight-Ashbury Seniors group. There was I had gotten an email list that for a while I was sending updates to on meetings. So I don't know if that's helpful or connected. And
no, the woman, we would meet at the library, and the woman that was organizing it was not the least bit interested in anything that she perceived as political. Every time I would try and make an announcement at about CCC's ongoing work, she would either cut me off or put me at the end of the agenda, and then we'd run out of time. It seemed that most of the women who continued to come were homeowners. There's a couple of us, including Richard, who are units and interested in senior housing. The other person that was interested in senior housing has since had a stroke and is now in a assisted living facility, which is a reminder to all of us seniors that we don't have a lot of time. Anyway, I will. I need to go through all of my old lists and get all the phone numbers and all the group names and reorganize the stuff that I had from last year before the pandemic and get back working on it.
Okay, thanks, Louise, for explaining that. So for the meetings coming up on Thursday and Saturday, it seems like bringing up interim use, I don't know if that's the point that we should bring up, or more, should we push for just turnout at those meetings?
Push for turnout. Let people ask what questions they want. Because if there are questions that the developers don't want to talk about, it's good that more and more people know that and are bothered by it. Not only is interim use the question, the other question is, what are the units going to be inside? How many of each thing, studio, one bedroom, larger family units, what proportion is still specifically for TAY, which cannot, as far as I'm concerned, that mustn't be reduced. The proportion for them, and then, make the developers deal with the chips as they fall.
At the August 6th meeting, Calvin, did they say anything about senior units at all? Like did they address?
No, there officially are no quote unquote senior units. There is the formulation that's used is that there are, a number of units that are able to be occupied by seniors, and seniors are welcome to apply. But it is interesting. I think it is of some interest to know how many one bedrooms, how many studios, how many two bedrooms there are. But the official formulation is that seniors are part of the population that can reside here, although we cannot reserve units for only seniors, whereas they can reserve units for only TAY. And families. And families, they are quick to remind you, can include grandparents.
Yes.
Regarding affirmative marketing or what are the terms about the neighborhood preference? Is it just District 5? I think my recollection, it was in a sort of a radius around the site of about a mile or something like that.
Something like that.
That's the preference, is a radius of a mile around the site is first choice. The rest of the
No, it's not first choice. It's a preference. And there's a series of preferences. You are correct, Louise, that prior people with relocation benefits or from redevelopment areas also have a preference. I mean, there are so many, there are preferences for people who've been Ellis acted.
And people who
there
buildings
are
have
a
burned.
variety of preferences. And the neighborhood preference really only works if we have a large number of people in the neighborhood actually applying for the units. And that's what troubles me. I don't think we're going to have that. By ourselves, without special effort, people will not, in this neighborhood, will not necessarily know that the units are available. I think there has to be a very affirmative effort. And I think that we have a responsibility of at least providing lists of names or contacts or areas that we have reason to believe there are interested people, seniors that are interested. But there are a variety of preferences. There are so many preferences that one preference does not take precedence over another preference. There's at least 4 preferences: neighborhood, certificate owners, holders from redevelopment, people displaced by Ellis Act evictions. So I think there's 1 or 2 other preferences. So the notion of preference is meaningless unless you have people that meet those preferences actually applying for the unit.
And that's not going to be, those people are not going to learn about it with some computer announcements. It's
Oh,
going to
absolutely.
have to be direct mail, direct doorbelling, phone bank. Oh God, I mean, it's just like terrifying to me how much work.
Well, that's why we have to find some institutional entities,
Right.
Senior Disability Action, the group on Geary, to provide that kind of administrative backup. That's what they're geared to do. They can do that. We're not so geared. We just have to organize it.
I wonder if we could get some information from the Dahlia system relative to D5 and maybe even the radius of people who are already registered.
I could.
I can also, CCDC just within the last 6 months, less than that actually, launched Casa Adelante in the Mission. I know that the Mission neighborhood was a preference. Neighborhood preference was a thing there as well. I can ask some folks. So this was, it wasn't necessarily seniors, but it was a neighborhood preference. I can just try to find some information about how the proactive outreach worked and how successful it was. I know that Casa Adelante got sort of swept up in the shelter-in-place rehousing effort. So I think in many cases that took preference over all the other preferences, but I can find out.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, kind of. Just thinking like the points that you're making, Luis, like why we need to be directing it so much, because they're just used to, it's like all online. They, come here, register here, versus why we need to be directing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, some people do have computers and may use it to talk to their grandkids, or they're more like Peter, who just reads stuff there, but if he needs to get information, then he uses the telephone. And I think I said David last time. I meant Peter. The other thing is to have the information on paper, and then I would be happy to go to your office or your door and get a copy of all, so that I've got all of the stuff on paper and not trying to take notes at a meeting while I'm holding the phone in one hand. Eventually, I always end up behind on my notes, and then I can get the senior working group back together and actually have something to get them to do, to have for them to do. And the other point I'd like to make about going to places directly, when I went to leave notices at the churches between this end down to the ones on Fillmore, I was constantly being reminded by the ministers, you know, most of my congregation, they would say, no longer lives in the neighborhood. These are all the people that got moved out by the 50s, 60s redevelopment. And they had been a major place for residents to find out what's going on and to get help. So, and that was a place that I was going to get information and spread information. And yeah, you see the church around the corner from me. Everybody comes in a car because they're not coming from several blocks away anymore. And St. Ignatius even was using the parking lot at Adams campus building, because everybody at not St. Ignatius, I'm sorry, St. Agnes, right there off of on Masonic. Anyway, I don't mean to keep going on about the obstacles. Just please, everybody, follow up on the info you promised to get, and I will pull out my names and phone numbers from before the pandemic and start getting people lined up again.
Well, and I will mail you a copy or drop off a copy of the notes that David is going to be sending us on email. Going back to the subject of interim uses, it seems to me that it's very possible that it will devolve to a parking lot for the merchants. And I wonder how much we care about interim uses. Like, would we care enough? I mean, there's so much going on in the world. Would we care enough to try to publicize, here is our plan and here's what they are proposing, kind of thing, or what? There's something we might want to think more about. I think Calvin expressed the kind of the bared teeth, like, we do not want to go there kind of thing from the meeting that he had attended on August 6th. But we do have the lovely floor plan that some previous member of this committee made as like, here's something, and here's or pay paradise and put up a parking lot.
Yeah. Well, if they do go forward with a drop-in center on the site, then I would advocate for a small portion of it being devoted to the Institute on Aging, which is the one.
Absolutely. That's why it's critically important that you reaffirm the Institute's willingness to help out. And Tess, I'm going to go with the Jen Snyder email, that there are conversations underway between city departments about a drop-in center there. I think you're absolutely right. The possibility of a parking lot, especially during the Christmas season, given the terrible impact on small business.
Well, even regardless of that, a drop-in center is not, could very well be on one corner of the lot and parking on the rest of it. But yeah,
Absolutely.
I know. So it's just something that we should think about.
Right.
I mean, there's been a building and parking lot on the site for decades. You know, and there's certainly room for both, especially if the building is simply a pair of trailers or whatever.
Okay, so I think we've got our assignments, huh?
Yeah.
And Louise is going to contact the Institute on Aging. Did Tab agree to also talk with Senior Disability Action as well as the Milk Club to get some background information? No?
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
And I also have the reports from one of them is the senior tsunami, and the other one's a housing report and that's where I know that it's a mile from the site, but it doesn't say where in the site. I mean, the mile from the northeast corner of the building over to where I am is different than if it's measured. I don't quite hit it. If you measure from the center of the building a radius to where I am.
Well,
I took note of those things, you know.
no one is going to argue that Fell Street is not in the neighborhood.
Oh, right, yeah, but no, we're in District 5.
A mile includes a good part of Golden Gate Park, which there are very few seniors in.
Right.
Living in.
And it also, when it goes north and west, the mile goes outside of District 5 when you get to Fulton and Stanton. But the people on that corner, Haight Street is where their grocery store is, where their bookstores are, and so forth. That's why it's a mile and not strictly a supervisory district. Okay?
Great.
Tess, I wonder if you might be willing to contact Jen to try to get an update on her email, if that's possible.
I can ask her.
That's all we can do. And
I'm also happy to reach out to Jen too.
great.
Tess.
And folks,
You
Ilsa
can do it then.
and the other service providers, I'm sure, will keep us in contact should they be approached by either HSH or DPH.
Yes, certainly. We are expecting a large number of RFPs to start rolling out. The city departments are under a tremendous amount of pressure to move money instead of sitting on it. So I'll certainly report back to the group if we see anything about services at 730 Stanton.
Great, thank you. That sounds good. Is there anything else anybody wants to touch on or bring up?
Do I need to do anything? I'm happy to do something. Sorry for being late.
No worries. If you could, I mean, definitely come on Thursday if you can. That's the Zoom meeting, and I'll send out like how to register info, and then there's also one on Saturday.
Saturday's the in-person one, right?
Yeah, the in-person.
Yeah.
I'll just put
Yeah,
the
I
dates.
think I got both of the emails.
Okay.
Or the email about both of those events.
Okay, great.
I will be there.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for coming. It's good to see everybody
Yeah.
Or hear everybody.
and hear
Or
everybody.
here.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Have a good night.
Have a
you
good
guys.
night,
Thanks for keeping
everyone.
us organized, David. Bye.
And
Thank
thank
you,
you,
David.
David,
Right.
for doing a great job in pulling this together. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you all.
David, privately,
Mhm.
before I go, if it's
Yeah.
got a question just for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Would it help? Now, I got the info about this meeting because one of the people you had to send emails to was, I should say, another member of the senior working group.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then she called me a couple of days later,
Yeah.
Denise Zetlow.
Mhm.
Would it help if I dropped off to your house a stack of self-addressed stamped envelopes so that you, because I don't know if you use stamps at all for anything, so that every time you send out any information to the board, CCC board, you can just put a copy of what it is in the envelope and put it in any mailbox. I can save you a trip for stamps. I can save you having to look up my address.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. What's your address?
My address is 1660 Fell Street, apartment 2. And I was at your house once.
Okay.
And I don't remember what your address was. It was 2 blocks beyond the bus stop.
Yeah, I'm at 1166 Danyon, but I'll do that. I'll just keep you and keep you informed over mail. I'll send you whenever we're doing a meeting.
Okay, and it's the zip code's
update.
94117. And
Sure.
what else?
Or I can just drop it off to you. Either way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a gate, a garden gate, and if you just shoot something like Tess has done, or the delivery people for the other tenants, they just throw boxes over the gate or shoot them under the gate, and I always get the stuff for me. But I didn't know anything about either this May or August 6th meetings.
The August 6th meeting was not an open meeting, and no, it was by invitation only. And as I reported, I'm the only one that was invited from the CCC. This was Ted Lowenberg's doing, I believe.
Okay.
So David would not be able to help
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
I did give a report to the CCC that I should have hand delivered to you, but I didn't. Sorry.
Okay. Well, every so often you and I see each other dog walking in the panhandle, so stick it in your
Right.
pocket.
I rarely bring my papers.
I bring all sorts of stuff. That's why I make vests and jackets just for dog walking, so I have enough pockets. Anyway, I'm going to get off the phone now. My cat is definitely pestering me to be fed.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Bye for
everybody.
now.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care. Have a good night.
Thank you, Louise.